All the young boys and girls on this side, against the wall, just stand on here. Good to see Nadeem coming in. Assalamu alaikum. Just come. Everybody, Bismillah. Do you want me to move on? Wajid is not coming because he's gone for 2 days.
Oh.
How are you and how's the baby and everybody else?
Alhamdulillah.
Good. Thank you, no problem. I'll give you back this.
No, I'll come out.
Hussain is here. Could you ask after me, Lord Qurban Hussain, because he has to go somewhere. Al-Dadais is not here yet, but when he comes up.
Yeah, right.
No, it's not for everybody. We will be very brief and it will.
Can I just make a very brief
I need to be out by half past. Many years. Minutes.
Okay.
Somebody here. Bismillah.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome all. Thank you all for coming to this important event. The International Imam Hussain Council is recognized as one of the biggest platforms for community harmony. Over the last 33 years, we have arranged events to celebrate and observe the death and birth anniversaries of Hazrat Fatima alayhi salam, in order to promote the humanitarian, charitable and tolerant Islamic teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. These events have been attended by all sections of the community, including heads of states, diplomats, envoys and scholars from all over the different schools of thought in Islam. On behalf of the International Imam Hussain Council, I would like to thank you all for participating in today's Syeda Fatima conference. And I would first of all ask Brother Paul Armstrong to do a short qira'ah for us, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر
Thank you very much. Can I ask Brother Mullah Ali to do a short nasheed for us? Is not there? No. Now, as our host, Lord Nazir Ahmad, can I ask you to do the welcome speech, please?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. I have a great honor and pleasure. First of all, thank you, my brother Yusuf Al-Khoy, for chairing this event on behalf of International Imam Hussain Council. And I also welcome Lord Alderdice, if you can come on the top here, please. We're expecting you to speak later on. It's my great honor and pleasure to welcome you here. And I want to say a particular thank you to International Imam Hussain Council for organizing these events on a regular basis. And in particular, Barrister Rubab, and I know where you probably not want to clap, but at least say thank you to her for the excellent organization that she does every year. Because even though we are restricted with numbers, this is the only meeting in every year that exceeds the number that we expect. So thank you and congratulations for organizing this wonderful event. For me, it is great honor to see rabbis and priests and imams and people with different faiths at this very special event. And the reason why I say that, because Syeda Fatima Zahra, for us, not only for Muslims that she is the leader of the Muslim women in Jannah, but she's leader of the Muslim women in this world as well. A very special woman that brings all sects and all faiths together. You can see from the gathering here, she was a role model for women. A young woman that was respected so much by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that when she entered the house, the Prophet would rise and would not sit down until his daughter, beloved daughter, sat down. Everything that he did, he consulted with his daughter. When he returned from outside after the prayer, 2 rakat of prayer, he always went to see his daughter. So a special woman in today's world where we have our differences, sometimes political differences that we translate them into religious differences, whether it is in the Middle East or whether it is, say for instance, in Bahrain today. And because I'm a politician and I need to say, because Brother Yusuf told me last week about the mosques that have been demolished, and I tell you, my brothers and sisters, in the House of Lords today, I asked Her Majesty's government to raise it with the Bahraini government in relation to the demolition of mosques and said that we should not tolerate that. And that's why it's important that together, and it was Imam Raza Shahid from Minab who had issued a press release, and I mentioned Minab in the House of Lords as well, that they had issued and expressed their concern in relation to that. So it's a blessing for us to be able to host an event annually for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's family and Sayyidina Fatima Zahra. So thank you, Barrister Rubab, and thank you to the International Imam Hussain Council for giving me this opportunity to welcome you all to the House of Lords. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lord Ahmad, and thank you for raising the issue of the destruction of mosques in Bahrain. And you actually proved those who try to say there is a rift between Shias and Sunnis on this. You proved them wrong by being a Sunni yourself and defending the rights of everyone and all places of worship. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Can I now ask Barrister, no, let the ladies have one first. Just, you have time. Oh, okay. Okay, I'll ask because Lord Qurban Hussain has to leave us in 2 minutes. So can I request you humbly to please give us your thoughts on
Thank you
this.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Lords, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I'm really pleased to be here today, particularly when I can see people from many faiths coming together. It is about time that we start celebrating things which we can all come to. And I think this is one wonderful event where we are all together. And there are many, many other events that I'm sure that can bring us all together. And particularly a conference or meeting about the family members of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I have to say that whether you are Sunni, Shia, or whichever Muslim sect, the family of the Prophet, there is no argument about that, and point and park is all respected by all sections of the Muslim faith, and particularly the females. I think in Islam, after what we call in English Eve, and we say Hawa alayhi salam, and from the first lady on the earth, and then going on to many other very famous females, Asiya, the wife of the Pharaoh, and then of course Mary. These are the people which are mentioned in the Quran many times, and in fact on Mary we have one special chapter of Quran which is about Mary, and therefore Islam talks about the famous females in the history, and of course in the history of Islam all these females are very, very important, and so is Fatima Zahra, one of the daughters of the Prophet, and she is, as Lord Imam has said, that she is considered to be the lady, not only the leader of the ladies in Jannah, but of course in this world too, and she has been very close to the Prophet, although the Prophet did have other daughters and sons, although the sons were short-lived comparing to his daughters, but she was the closest person to the Prophet, as we read in the books of the Islamic teaching, and no doubt being the mother of Imam Hussain and Hussain, the two grandsons of the Prophet, and that makes her even more important and more mentioned in the history of Islam than any other daughters of the Prophet. And I'm saying that I'm really pleased that we are holding these events, and I'm sorry that I've got to leave. I've got another meeting at past to go to, so I've got to leave you here, and I hope the meeting goes well. And once again, thank you very much to the organizers who have organized this meeting.
Lord Qurban Hussain of Luton, thank you very much for those short words. Can I invite Maulana Saab, Maulana Shahad Raza, the chairman of Mina, to enlighten us with a few wise words.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursaleen wa alihi at-tayyibin wa ashabihi al-mukarramin. First of all, I would follow Lord Ahmad and Lord Hussain in extending my congratulations and greetings to International Imam Hussein's Council for not only organizing this event but providing an opportunity to all of us, representatives from different walks of life, representatives of faith communities, to be here and share with the Council our respect and our love for the daughter of the great Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Syeda Fatima Zahra Salamallahu alayhi. As a Sunni Muslim, may I share with you the principles and foundations of our beliefs that are based upon respect and love. Of course, first of all, this respect and love goes out for our Lord, for our Creator. And then the love and respect is reserved for all the prophets and messengers of God, including indeed Moses and Jesus Christ. And then this love and respect in Sunni faith, and by saying so, I am not in any way trying to exclude any of other dominations of Islamic faith or other faith. The love and respect goes exclusively to the family of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who are known as Ahlul Bayt, the household of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of God be upon him and his holy family. What I am going to say will be in the form of a very short poem. It is more or less in Persian and Arabic, and I will certainly translate it into English. How Sunni Muslims admire, respect, love and praise Syeda Fatima Zahra Salamallahu alayha. Fatima binte Muhammad Mustafa, Fatima Ruhe Rasule Dosara, Fatima Shane Rasule Hashmi, Fatima Jane Rasule Hashmi, Fatima Sar Chashme Sabro Raza, Fatima Bahre Sakha Faizo Ata, Fatima Umme Shahidane Wafa, Fatima Naze Janabe Murtaza, Fatima Noore Nigahe Mustafa, Khane U Jalwagahe Mustafa. Fatima, who is the daughter of Muhammad, the chosen prophet of God. She is almost the soul and the life of the prophet. Fatima is the glory of the messenger belonging to the family of Hashim. Fatima is the life and spirit of the messenger who comes from the family of Hashim. Fatima is the fountainhead of patience and contentment. Fatima is the ocean of generosity and bounty and favors. Fatima is the mother of the martyrs, Hussain and Hussain, who gave their life for the sake of humanity. And Fatima is the pride of Maula Ali, her husband. Fatima is the light of the eyes of the Prophet, and Fatima's house is a greatest place of display of splendor of the glory of the Prophet. So this is how we, the Sunni Muslims, love and respect and admire the great daughter of the Prophet, who is of course the role model for all of us, particularly for our women, for our daughters, for our sisters, but through her teachings she has left some pearls, golden pearls of morality and spirituality for all of us. In this time of spiritual hunger and moral bankruptcy, Imam Hussain International Council must be once again congratulated to hold this event where we can revive our sense of morality and spirituality for having a better life and better human environment in this country and all over the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Maulana Shah, for those very wise words and lovely poem. And thank you so much for doing so much, for bringing the different schools of Islam, Shia and Sunni and others together, and for contributing so much to interfaith relations in this country. Can I now request Barrister Rubab Al-Mahdi, who is really is the energy behind this event, who takes the inspiration herself from Syeda Fatima, and who has contributed so much to women development in the Muslim world. And I cannot describe her energy and her commitment and her zeal to this cause. And only if lots of our women had her drive and her energy and be the spokesman for Islam, we wouldn't have many of the problems that we have today. Sister Rubab, it's your floor and it's your function, but please don't take too long.
I forgot the chair, but my lords, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to pass on all those glorious words to my father figure, Lord Nazir Ahmed. Without him, this event wouldn't be possible. And all I have is dua for the kind of encouragement that he gives to us. On behalf of International Imam Hussain Council, I would like to thank you all in joining us in celebrating Syeda Fatima Salaamullah Alaiha Interfaith event. Over the last 31 years, Imam Hussain Council has arranged events to build in bridges between communities and emphasize on women empowerment in Islamic thought. The theme of today's event is, can women build bridges between Abrahamic religions? In other words, can women be socially and politically active? When we say socially and politically active, we are not trying to undermine here what comes naturally to us. Our role as mothers. Lady Mary and Syeda Fatima Salaamullah Alaiha are both examples of infallible mothers who gave their sons away for sacrifice for the betterment of humanity. And what we also can't forget is, while men try to struggle and find the four meanings of the word jihad, and in doing so, may I have the audacity, have conveniently stigmatized the very words, women crown every alphabet of this word jihad by giving birth. For to give birth is jihad. To give birth to life is jihad. Coming back to the topic, can women be politically, I'm not really used to talking in graveyards. Please at least do some salawat. I mean, you can always, coming back to the point, can we be politically and socially active? We've had events in the past. In the pre-Islamic Arabia, people do talk about women being buried. But what they forget is that right at the helm of what was called the Arab Parliament, Dar al-Najwa, were two parliamentarians, Abu Lahab and Abu Sufyan. And no decision in the parliament could be taken without the consent of Yatim and Hind, who were their wives. So even at that time, we had parliamentarians. But the difference is, they couldn't care less while half of the female population was being buried alive in their presence. Again goes to show that what we need today is systems, not just trophy parliamentarians claiming to represent us. Now we've had, and we also have a hadith by the Holy Prophet ﷺ, that the nation who places its affairs in the hands of women shall surely perish. But what is interesting to note is that the person who narrated this hadith fought in the army of Hazrat Aisha, and according to most versions of Islam, if he actually believed in this hadith, he would not have fought in an army where the commander was a woman. So we've had glorious examples of this, and in Quran, women have actually been praised for being politically active. There are two queens who have been placed in the Quran for being politically active. One is the Queen Sheba, whose kingdom was built up on humility. And the other one is the Queen Asiya, who's known as Vidya in the Jewish tradition. And she has been praised for politically speaking out against the injustices of Pharaoh. Then we have the glorious example of Lady Mary. In the Quran, Jesus has been mentioned 34 times. But it's always Isa ibn Maryam. Hazrat Abraham has been mentioned also. Hazrat Joseph has been mentioned also. But they haven't been called by their mother's name. Why Isa ibn Maryam? Because it is impossible to understand Jesus until you fully comprehend and contemplate on the infectious patience and the struggles of Lady Mary. We also have the example of Hajar, buried in Kaaba. If you see, normally she was a black slave girl, but she is an identity of a free, emancipated woman, the only woman to be buried in the Kaaba, something no man has been able to achieve. And from the line of Hajar comes Sayyidatul Nisa'il Alameen, Hazrat Fatima Zahra Her struggle began when she was a child only. She would pick up thorns from beneath her father's feet before he would step on them. She saw ample placenta being thrown on her father, and while many adult men with tears coming forward, she would fearlessly come in defense of her father. She saw her mother being buried without shroud in the Shab-e Abi Talib. Then at the age of 15, you see in the verses of Mubahila how she goes step by step with her father. If the Prophet ﷺ did not want women to be active, he would have asked Syeda Fatima to stay at home. He would not have accompanied her, and as we all know, Mubahila is the verse where Christians and Muslims were accusing each other of blasphemy. And because beacons of light came from both directions, what was supposed to be a mutual cursing turned out to be a mutual cooperation. Again goes to show that religion is not irrelevant, even today. Coming back to the struggle, and what people forget is that there is a verse on abundance. There is a fountain of Kausar in the heaven, but also the verse of abundance is narrated on Janab Zahra as well. She's Kausar not only because the line of Sayyida from her, but she inherited the abundance of values from her great father. And it is in various ahadith that when the Prophet ﷺ was away from Medina, both men and women would come to Syeda Fatima for advice. And she had 8 gardens. She had built up a welfare nation. This is something that is not commonly mentioned at all. She had 8 gardens, the produce of which was being used for nothing but for the welfare of the orphans, the less fortunate, and the women. Syeda Fatima was the daughter of 2 merchants. And she built up this welfare estate which was being used and which was a major source of income for the less fortunate, the women and the orphans. And even after her father's death, we see her struggle the only voice to speak for the imamat and the person to stand about in the lonesome dale next to Ali ibn Abi Talib, where nobody would take the name of Ali ibn Abi Talib politically. Then we see her sermon, where she is seen to be challenging the authority of the time, quoting verse by verse from the Quran, and crowning the very word faqiha. Now all of us, we can weep on Fatima, but the question is that can we be active like Janab Zahra Salamullah alayha today? And the question is, can religion and politics be mixed together? But when you look at the dark period, which we all want to forget, and if you look at the time when the scientists were put in the dungeons for simply saying the earth is round, there is an argument that religion and politics should not be mixed together. But then the question is, can secular values and politics be mixed together? And when you see Mao Zedong, when you see Stalin, when you see Saddam Hussein's Iraq, and when you see the 50 million deaths in between in Ceausescu's Romania, then there is an argument that maybe secular values and politics should also not be mixed together. Where then is the solution? In the words of Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Benazir Bhutto, they said that there are two powers that govern the world. It is the pen and the sword. There has been significant rivalry and competition between the two. There is a third power, stronger than them both, and that is the power of women. Salvat. Try to use this power, and you will see how everything binds together. And this is not something that I am saying. We all know that one of the great, there are 3,000 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and one of the greatest name is that of Rahman, the all-inclusive God, who provides for all regardless of their beliefs. He provides for you even if you don't believe in Him. And from that very word Rahman comes the word Raham, which means the female womb. So the unity of humanity, the unity of mankind lies in the womb of a woman. We are not aliens who have just landed from a different planet. We are your mothers, we are your daughters, we are your sisters. But above all, we are our own persons. And it's about time that our services are acknowledged. Fair se fehme bashar ka hasil, alif se alhamd ki kiran hai. Toy se taha ke ghar ki raunak, meen se manzile mehran hai. Re se har dosra ke sultan ki purnoor anjuman hai. Re se rehnumai wafa, alif se awwal nasab hai iska. इसीलिए नाम फातिमा है, जनाब ज़हरा लक़ब है इसका।
MashaAllah. You've actually changed ahead of your time. All I would say, Sister Rubat, keep up the struggle. It is a very good cause, defending the rights of women. And what actually, I have to say one word about men. This young man, your husband, I really envy the way you managed to do all this hard work and keep him so content and happy. That is really something that I would really encourage everybody to follow. Anyway, thank you very much for this. We move on to request. Sorry. No? Oh, don't have follow order. Can I now invite Right Honourable Lord Aldir Dice, Chairman of the Liberal Democrats, to enlighten us with a few words, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the kind invitation to be with you. And may I bring you greetings from your brothers and sisters in Ireland. I'm an elder of the Presbyterian Church in Ireland. My faith is very important to me. And I want to bring you the greetings of your brothers and sisters who are Irish Christians. In particular, I've been asked to say a few words about how women can help to bring us together across the divisions of religious faith within the Abrahamic community and indeed beyond. And there are many speakers, so I don't want to take up much of your time. And I would bring one or two brief experiences from home and from our situation in Ireland. Yesterday, of course, many of you will have seen two women representing the two sides of our history, leading our communities together in a marvellous historic act in Dublin Castle. Queen Elizabeth and President Mary McAleese. The two women who in their own different ways have given remarkable leadership to our countries over a long period of time. And indeed I may say that President McAleese's predecessor, President Mary Robinson, also gave transformational leadership in the island of Ireland. So it's a very appropriate time for us to think about the role of women. Now, there are those in political life who say that the main problem is that the men are in charge. Actually, if women ran things, it would be so much better. Well, this may or may not be true. It is the case that sometimes women have been almost as difficult as men in the running of things. So it's not quite a case of good and bad. But there are some important particular things that I believe that women often bring to divisions in religious faith and in the political dimension. Let me refer to one particular really catastrophic event in Northern Ireland where women played a very important role. You will recall that in the early 1980s, Republican prisoners in the prison in just outside Belfast went on hunger strike. I may say that part of their struggle was against a woman because they were very angry with the way that Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher had dealt with problems of Republican prisoners. Whether that's justified or not is not the question. They went on hunger strike, and as time went on, first one, and then another, and then 10 eventually died on hunger strike. The hunger strike ended because finally the mothers of the hunger strikers said, this is enough. This is not reaching a solution to the problem. It's dividing the community. It's destroying our families. Our young men are dying to no productive purpose. And in a sense, the men had trapped themselves into this terrible loss of life, because once one had died and another, then the men began to feel that their pride was caught up in this, that their manliness was being caught up in this. For them not to continue this endless row of deaths would be to give up their pride in themselves as men and as Republicans. And it took the mothers to come along and say, when he goes unconscious on hunger strike, I want you to put up a drip and make sure that he gets sustenance and fluids. And first one mother did it. It was the mother of Patsy McGeown, a man whom I later came to know as a member of Belfast City Council. I served alongside of him. And once his mother had done that and he'd been brought to consciousness and he realized that if he went on hunger strike again, his mother would simply do the same thing again. Then the next mother did it, and the next, and within a short time the hunger strike was finished. Now, the reason I draw that to your attention is because I think one of the great failings that we have as men is that we tend to get very caught up in our thinking about things, in our beliefs about things, and in our standing and power in the community. Indeed, when I tried as a political leader at home to get more women involved in politics, many of them said to me, it's a silly boys' game. You never solve anything. I'd far rather continue in my work of building integrated schools and women's groups in the community that actually make a difference on the ground. And you can go and sit and talk for hours and hours and hours if you like, and never reach an agreement. But we as women, Protestant and Catholic and dissenter, will get together and make sure that things simply continue to work. That's a very important lesson, I think, for those of us who are men. We may have strengths, but we have great vulnerabilities and weaknesses. We can trap ourselves into ways of thinking that they sound terribly impressive, but actually ignore the realities on the ground. And one thing that I think women often bring is that sense of reality and honesty and the importance, the fundamental importance of relationships above all else. It does seem to me that the key element in our faith, whatever different background we come from, is about our relationships with each other and with God, with the transcendent. It's that relationship which is, it's not just what we believe. That's not to say what we believe isn't important. It isn't. It's not just the things that we read. And for all our Abrahamic traditions, what we read is of enormous importance. But back of it all, it's about our relationships with each other and with our God. And without women in our community, we might sometimes forget that that was what was really important. And so it seems to me that today is a wonderful opportunity, not just to pay tribute in some rather patronizing way to the role of women, but rather with some humility as men to recognize our weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and that we cannot be truly ourselves without the relationships that we have with our mothers. And I return home tomorrow morning to Belfast to see my mother, with our wives and friends and partners and our daughters. Today is a wonderful opportunity to celebrate that, but to do so with some humility about our limitations as men. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you very much. Could I now request Julian Bond of Christian Muslim Forum, who are very active in bringing Muslims and Christians together in the UK.
Ladies and lords, honourable members, sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum and greetings of peace. First of all, I'd like to thank my friend and colleague, Sister Rizvi, for asking me to speak at this important event. I quote from her invitation: "Gender-based nepotism in history means that achievements from females are conveniently forgotten. It is imperative in our struggle for gender parity that such personalities are given their rightful place theologically and socially, as they are an authentic source of law and ethics." In preparing, I noticed our male speaker lineup, though I gather that it's our sisters who are the stars of this event. I also wondered, would there be benefit in me writing a speech and asking a female colleague to deliver it? But no. There are important things that we need to hear men saying about key female figures in our religious traditions, a gap that hasn't been given the right kind of attention. Reflecting on Fatima and Mary, they both had important messages. They challenged men's words, actions and outlooks, and had close relationships with our founders, the Prophet Muhammad and Jesus Christ, peace be upon them both. And yet we neglect them. They are a mainstay of women's events and are more devotional communities, but are often sidelined. In my research on Lady Fatima, I was struck by the limited number of accounts about her and the uncertainty about actual events, including her untimely death. On the evidence of her speech or even sermon addressed to the leaders of the early Muslim community, she clearly had much to say, spoke strongly on the core message of Islam, and was deeply influenced by her father, the Prophet, and well versed, literally, in the words of the Quran. As a student of scriptures and traditions, I wish I knew more. But there are difficulties. Mainstream traditions give us the majority view. Key figures loom large, and others are less visible. This suggested the theme of unheard voices for this short talk. Giving these important women their proper recognition directs us to what was in their hearts and souls, engages us with their passion, and asks us to listen to what, in the Christian tradition, I can only describe as prophetic voices. They are much more than role models for women in our traditions, and men should be wary of presenting them in this way. When we point others towards something, we run the risk of missing the point ourselves. Mary gives this speech in one of the Gospels. From now on, all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name. His mercy extends to those who fear him, from generation to generation. He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but has sent the rich away empty. In many ways, this is the high point of the prophetic voice in the Bible, evoking the style of Isaiah, Amos, and other prophets in the Hebrew Scriptures. Mary speaks to an unequal and oppressive society with God's perspective and God's intentions. Is this the voice of men? Well, sometimes it is, though often men are privileged, create and maintain unequal structures, oppress and marginalise. In my experience, speaking generally, we often fill our platforms with men, and I've been challenged on this in my own work at the Christian Muslim Forum when we have leaders and scholars events. But I've been encouraged over the last year or so that we've appointed Muslim and Christian women to senior positions within our organisation, and that we're about to launch a women's leadership programme initiated and led by women. My good friend and colleague Anjum Anwar has recently set up an organisation in Blackburn for Muslim and Christian women called Women's Voice. Woman's Voice. It brings a different perspective and that prophetic quality into public conversations. If we listen to women, Lady Fatima and Mary, and those who are with us today, we hear a different voice, a voice of challenge and change, and God is on the side of change too, our traditions tell us. I don't want to dwell on gender politics and male structures, but it seems to me that at the moment this is a vital role for women. Contemporary secular wisdom suggests that a man cannot be a man unless he engages fully with woman's challenge, and that a woman will not properly be a woman if she is not listened to and engaged with. I don't want to take attention away from these key women, but for a moment, when we listen to them, we hear our founders' voices too. The first shall be last, meeting God in the homeless or prisoners, caring for the weak, the encouragement to be humble. It is no surprise that these women are mother and daughter, God's chosen ones. They're sisters to each other and mothers to us. They're for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia, for those touching words. Now, we are particularly honored and privileged to have three representatives of other faiths who will give us, first of all, for joining us in this celebration, secondly, for giving some perspective from their own faith about women. Can I first invite Bishop Nick Holtman from Salisbury to give us a few words, please?
Thank you very much, and thank you for the honour of inviting me to contribute to this trialogue in honour of Syeda Fatima. London, I'm a London parish priest. I'm not the Bishop of Salisbury, not yet. I won't be the Bishop of Salisbury for 2 more months, but it's very, very nice that you have designated me that already. I'm a London parish priest, and I've worked in Tower Hamlets, and I am the Vicar of St Martin in the Fields in Trafalgar Square. And in London, over 300 first languages are spoken in our schools. This is a world in a city, and it's possible for us to live alongside each other in peace. That's not only important for our city and country, but it's an act of witness to the world. In 1979, I went to work in Stepney in East London. Historically, Stepney is a Jewish part of London, and I was the last Christian chaplain to the London Jewish Hospital just before it closed, because the Jewish population was getting older and moving out and being replaced by a growing Bangladeshi community in that part of Tower Hamlets. it was immensely moving listening to the stories of these elderly Jews, many of whom had fled Germany just before the war and whose relatives had died in the Holocaust. And then with the growing Bangladeshi community in Tower Hamlets, there was a need for the community to get to know each other in new ways. And we found religious dialogue was difficult for us because if I went to the mosque, then we would get prepared positions where I would hear what people wanted me to hear. And it wouldn't be so much a dialogue as a debate where you're trying to beat one another down in order to establish that my truth is stronger than your truth. But in a dialogue, we meet each other and learn to listen to our truths together. So I think what I learned at that stage of my life was that it was important for communities to learn to meet in ways that were not threatening to each other. And my wife was the secretary of the Ocean Estate Tenants Association, and we found that by meeting over food, it's a simple thing, isn't it? Religious communities know about meeting over food. We all do, and the importance of a shared meal. But by meeting over food and enjoying each other's different cultural traditions, we met each other in such a way that we began to want to address those issues in our community which were common. A shortage of school places, a lack of employment for our youngsters, the fact of racism on the estates of East London. And we found that a common concern for justice was fed by the values of our different faith traditions. So we began a method of working which was not, in the first instance, religious-based, but which was informed by our different religious traditions. And that same experience was something that we used when I was Vicar of the Isle of Dogs in the late 1980s through to 1995. And you might remember that Britain's first BNP councillor was elected on the Isle of Dogs and caused a huge crisis for that community, which we had to try to work through together in order to get him removed at the following May council elections. So it's not optional for the different faith communities to work together. And that's both because of the spirit, the human spirit's longing for truth and for God, but also because of the social and political importance of religion in our time. On the Sunday after 9/11, BBC Radio 4 came to St Martin in the Fields for the broadcast of Sunday worship. It was important to us that we were able to hold that act of worship with the presence of a rabbi, Rabbi Mark Weiner, and an Imam, Dr. Zaki Badawi, in order that we could resist the impact of terrorism which seeks to divide us and stand together to pray for peace and read from our scriptures and seek a common good. We've done similar things since, and it's important to show that people of faith can stand together in our different religious traditions, saying clearly that peace is something we each seek. I asked my clergy colleagues at St Martin in the Fields what I should say about Mary, the mother of Jesus, in a trialogue about three women in our religious traditions: Miriam, the sister of Moses, and Syeda Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad. In Jewish, Christian and Islamic traditions, three great women. My colleagues talked about the religious tendency to idealize women and thought that Mary, the mother of Jesus, had suffered from this idealization in Christian thought. They wanted to emphasize her humanity. And we wondered what sort of conversation there might be if Miriam, Mary and Fatima were here in this room with us. One who has worked for almost half his life in Indonesia and the Pacific Islands said that in simpler parts of the world than ours, there's a tremendous power to motherhood, children and family, which perhaps gets lost in our more complex cultures here in London. My colleagues wanted to ensure that I talked about the difference of our sacred texts and to recognise that what we have as Jews, Christians and Muslims are different sorts of books, although they tell some of the same stories. For example, if I bring my Christian Bible, it is in English. It is the tradition for Christians since the invention of the printing press and the Reformation and just before to translate the scriptures into the vernacular. And it's a tradition which is rooted in the way we've handled scriptures from the beginning, with a Hebrew Bible shared with Jews, a Greek text in the New Testament which is translated into Latin and has been translated since into the vernacular. So there's something here about the Christian Bible which is a library of texts, 66 books, written over a period of 1,000 years, telling of the stories of God and God's people, enlivening us and judging and purifying us, and in which Mary is one of the figures who provides an example of how to live a holy life. And we've already heard quoted the Song of Mary from when the angel announced to her that she would bear God's Son, in which the lives of the rich and powerful will be overturned and the poor and lowly lifted up. Every religion contains an account within it of what it is to be human. And in the Christian Gospels, we hear of the life, death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Mary, Christ's mother, is an example of sacrificial love, and she represents what it is to be obedient to the call of God. As a young woman, she responded to the announcement by the angel that she would bear God's Son faithfully. And in her response, she magnifies God, as it were, enlarging our appreciation of God and recognizing that in her call, God overturned the order of this world by not using the powerful and mighty, but raising up the humble and the lowly. In the account of Jesus' suffering, his passion, his crucifixion, the male disciples did not perform well. One betrayed Jesus, one denied Jesus, the others ran away. By contrast, his mother Mary and the women in the company of Jesus are said to have stayed through the crucifixion, either watching at a distance, or in John's Gospel, there stood Mary, his mother, at the foot of the cross. It can be confusing to non-Christians that there are several Marys named in the Gospels. Mary Magdalene is the best known of these other Marys, and she is a witness to the resurrection of Jesus Christ. In Christian tradition, the stories about Mary Magdalene have been conflated from a number of stories within the Gospels where a woman who is not actually named becomes associated in Christian tradition with Mary Magdalene. She was possessed by 7 demons and healed by Jesus. She was a woman of the city who was a sinner, and therefore a person who exemplifies what it is to be a follower of Jesus, healed and made whole, forgiven and renewed. Jesus said it's the person who's been forgiven much who will love much. And Mary Magdalene is identified as the woman who poured costly ointment over the feet of Jesus, anointing him at the start of the journey that leads to his death and the cross, and wiping his feet with her hair. Mary Magdalene's been made by Christian tradition to be an idealized but very human, flawed figure. Mary, the mother of Jesus, has been idealized in such a way that she does not seem so earthly. She's been said by some to be perpetual virgin and queen of heaven. Ideas which seem to me to highlight the problem Christians have in bearing witness to God come among us in human form. The God-bearer, Jesus' mother, Mary, takes on a unique role which raises her above the rest of us. yet the Christian Gospels show her to be the most human. Young, fearful, full of wonder, and she stays with her son through what must be the greatest fear of any parent, the death of their child. As with Miriam and Fatima in Judaism and Islam, the person we meet here in Mary, the mother of Jesus, is also an archetype of the human, the best of humanity revealed in the most ordinary and difficult of circumstances. Just over a year ago, 2 women visited St. Martin in the Fields from the Parents' Circle in Israel-Palestine. Both had sons killed in the conflict between Israel and Palestine. In this extraordinary group, bereaved families, victims from both sides, have embarked on a joint reconciliation mission while the conflict is still active. The Parents' Circle consists of several hundreds of bereaved families, half Palestinian and half Israeli. Since its inception in 1995, it has led a reconciliation process between Israelis and Palestinians. Their mission statement is to prevent further bereavement in the absence of peace, to influence the public and policymakers to prefer the way of peace to the way of war, to educate for peace and reconciliation, to promote the cessation of acts of hostility and the achievement of political agreement, to prevent the usage of bereavement as a means of expanding enmity between people, to uphold mutual support between our members. I was struck by the willingness of these mothers to acknowledge their own and each other's pain. And I was struck by their commitment to try not to take sides or to demonize the enemy. It seems to me that they exemplify the best of what it is to be human, and are the best examples I know of what it is, of what it might be like were Miriam, Mary and Fatima to be here in conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop Rizvi, Nick Hoffman of Salisbury, for that wonderful Christian perspective. And I now turn for a Jewish perspective to Senior Rabbi Mark Weiner from the West Synagogue. Please give us some.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here once again. This is my 3rd year, and more important than what we've shared together is the relationships that have grown out of this conference. My friendship with Lord Ahmed goes back many years, but we've grown especially close, Rubam and Shabib, and Shirvaz, their son, their gorgeous son, now has a Jewish grandfather who brings the presents regularly whenever I come to London. I speak to you this afternoon as one whose central occupation for the entirety of my 68.5 years has been building bridges. I learned to build bridges from both my parents, but it was particularly from my mother that I learned to build bridges from a religious base. My mother was a social worker who devoted her professional life to working with poor African Americans and Mexican Americans in the Texas of my youth. She also taught religious school, posting newspaper articles on the walls of her classroom and asking of her students that they find passages in the Jewish tradition which pertain to each story. She also founded a synagogue choir with 3 of her closest women friends. I became a rabbi devoted to building bridges out of my identification with my mother. I not only always built bridges to other religions, I also learned from my interaction with them. From a Catholic nun in nursery school, when I was 3 years old, I learned how to pray before going to sleep, concluding in Hebrew with the Shema. A Catholic nun taught me the Shema, the traditional Jewish declaration of faith. In Utah, where I was born, I had endless theological discussions with the Mormons around me. In my teens, in then racially segregated Texas, I preached every week in a different black church about how we as blacks and whites together would build a better future. From those black churches, I deepened my spirituality. As an undergraduate planning to become a rabbi, I studied New Testament and Christian theology in university. As a rabbinic student, I began my studies in Israel, in Jerusalem, where I learned from some of my Israeli Jewish friends to appreciate Islam, to befriend Arabs, and to appreciate Arab culture, language, and food. During the 13 years I served as the senior rabbi of the West London Synagogue of British Jews, located near Edgware Road, no less, I lived and worked in the center of what many Londoners derisively call Londonistan, the heart of Arab and Muslim London. I so loved those 13 years that I cherished being called the Rabbi of Londonistan. I loved all of my work with the Central Mosque and Islamic Cultural Center in Regent's Park. I learned on a daily basis the wisdom of the Talmud, which in Tractate Sanhedrin declares that one who makes peace within one's neighborhood is viewed as having made peace within the entire world. As senior scholar of the West London Synagogue and as chairman of the International Interfaith Task Force of the World Union for Progressive Judaism, and as president of Faith, the foundation to advance interfaith trust and harmony, I have dedicated the rest of my life, inshallah, to building bridges among the Abrahamic religions. As Moses is among my idols, I plan on another 51 and a half years to a total of 120 just like Moses, inshallah. I look to work with you in this sacred endeavor of building bridges. Although I am not a Muslim, I am a dedicated student of the Quran, the Hadith, and the entirety of Islam. Although I am a rabbi and dedicated to teaching Torah, I am also an Islamophile, a lover of Islam and Muslims. As a rabbi, I'm also a Christophile, a lover of Christianity and Christians. Now that does not mean that I love every verse in the New Testament or every Christian, nor do I love every surah or every Muslim, but then I tell you for sure as a rabbi, I don't love every verse in the Torah and certainly not every Jew. The critical divide in our world is not between the different religions. The critical divide is between the extremist fundamentalists and moderate pluralists. The extremist fundamentalists of all religions make war with everyone, including their own modern pluralists. The moderate pluralists of all religions make peace with each other and resist and try to quarantine their extremist fundamentalist brothers and sisters. The moderate pluralists teach mutual respect and celebrate difference. As a rabbi who has spent his lifetime fighting Jewish extremist fundamentalists, I know how difficult the struggle is within Islam. The extremist fundamentalist Islamists threaten moderate Muslims as much as, if not more, than they threaten the entire world. As I am not a Muslim, but dedicated to the study of Islam and the appreciation of Muslims, so am I not a woman, but dedicated to the full equality of women within our world and within our respective religions. One of the greatest lessons of our modern world is the benefit of full equality and full participation of women within our religious traditions. Our religions are much the richer and wiser for their inclusion of women in the modern world. So you can see that the world that we live in desperately needs bridge builders, people who connect the past with the future, and the internal private world of feelings with the external public world of achievement. But perhaps most importantly, we need people who will build bridges between religious traditions and to the contemporary material world. Women are naturally naturals for such tasks because women take an active role in all kinds of relationships, linking the generations, caring for children and parents, responding to their joys and woes, and satisfying their needs and demands. Women make connections, and that is what bridge building is all about. So it is no surprise that this task of bridge building, which is so necessary, desperately necessary in the present, is reflected in the actions of the women in our past. Each of our Abrahamic religious traditions offer rich examples of women as bridge builders. In Christianity, there is a little-known hymn that Jesus recites in praise of all women. Respect woman, for she is the mother of the universe, and all the truth of divine creation lies in her. She is the basis of all that is good and beautiful, as she is also the germ of life and death. She gives birth to you in the midst of suffering. By the sweat of her brow she raises you, and until her death you cause her the gravest anxieties. For woman's love ennobles man, softens his hardened heart, tames the brute in him, and makes of him a lamb. The more traditional hymn of praise appears in both the Jewish and Christian tradition as the culmination at the end of the book of Proverbs, found in both the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Old Testament. This poem is a praise for the Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor. She is a prototype of the bridge builder, a model for women as ancient as the Bible and as contemporaries today. This poem entails some controversy because the woman of valor appears so capable that few can measure up to her, even her husband. But it provides evidence that demonstrates how traditional it is for a woman to be as active in the larger world as she is in her home. Women today may not do the same work as that biblical ancestor, but they know and understand what it means to try to fulfill roles outside and inside the home. No one can fail to praise such a woman. This ode to women is set up as an alphabetic acrostic in Hebrew, a kind of A to Z of what women are capable. She is a property owner as she envisions a field and buys it, and she is a vintner, for from the fruit of her handiwork she plants a vineyard. She is a merchant, for she makes a cloak and sells it, and delivers a belt to the peddler. And she is a teacher, for she opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She cares for her home, for she anticipates the ways of her household, and those beyond her household, for she spreads out her palm to the poor and extends her hands to the destitute. The description is so thorough that it encompasses a full range of tasks, addressing both the internal world of feeling and the external world of business. In a traditional Jewish home, this paean of praise to women is sung by a husband to his wife like a love song every Friday evening before the Sabbath dinner is eaten. It demonstrates how Jewish tradition asks a loving husband to recognize the value of women and teach that value to his children. Today we come to recognize Fatima, daughter of Muhammad, peace be upon him, as a leader of women and the quintessential woman of valor in her tradition. Indeed, she is known by many names that reflect their own full range of a woman's capability, for she is a model of all traditions. Fatima is known for her resemblance to her prophet father, Muhammad, peace be upon him. Her appearance, character, and even the way she walked were a reflection of her similarities with him. Her fine manners and gentle speech reflected his eloquence, and tradition says that this eloquence is rooted in the wisdom she inherited from her father. In addition, there are many stories about her defense of her father and the care she took of him. These characteristics have earned her the name Abiha, mother of her father. The care she took of him was mirrored in the care she showed her husband, her children, and all the people with whom she came in contact. She was poor when she was first married. and did not shirk the work necessary to keep her household. When she later gained wealth and she could hire maids, she treated them as family and worked with them. She thereby demonstrated in word and deed the equality between people that Islam teaches. She was a healer who cared for those who were hurt in battle. She was a model and teacher of her children. These worthy actions not only create a bridge between Muhammad and the people, both men and women of her time, but also the men and women of our time. We need to remember that her gentleness and obedience to God are not just the characteristics of a good woman, but of any human being. These traits are not just for the internal private world of the family. They need to be present in the external public world of achievement. We could use less ruthlessness and more gentleness, less arrogance and more humility. Why does one person need to lose at the expense of another winning? Can't we create a cooperative world where everyone has the possibility of winning? Fatima's attributes are the kinds of character traits that would allow us to do just that. They build a world of cooperation where we listen to each other so that we can truly hear each other and respond to each other's needs. Then the care she extended to others would be the care we extend to others, and the world could become a better place. The modern material world, we tend to be far more concerned with the bottom line than with how we get to that bottom line. Being wealthy and successful are more important than anything else, but all of the Abrahamic religious traditions teach us that this is not so. How we treat each other is more important. How we treat each other doesn't interfere with success. It creates a more lasting success. Fatima is an enduring model that confirms this message. She reminds us that how we go about achieving our goals is important. We must be as willing to treat others with respect and equality that she did. We must stand for justice and mercy as she does. It is when we use Fatima's qualities that we create the necessary bridge between the modern world and tradition. She teaches us that goodness isn't just for women or just for the private world of the family. It is for the whole world. In order for the world to learn this, women must participate actively in the world just as Fatima did. In this way, she builds a bridge between the modern world and tradition. I like to imagine a world in which the traits that characterize Fatima flourish. They are not just traits that describe a leader of women, but traits that describe a world where all love God and try to do God's will. These are traits that know no boundaries. People of all religious traditions admire them. In this way, she is also a bridge between traditions. We need to follow her lead. There is a story that when Muhammad died, peace be upon him, Fatima claimed the property rights her father had given her, but she was refused. Though she was asking for land, Fatima had property that was more important than land. It was her character. We must claim her character as our own property, and we must not be refused. We must use her qualities to make the world a better place. As the Woman of Valor poem ends, give her the fruit of her hands and let her be praised in the gates by her deeds. All religious traditions would be well to follow this advice.
Thank you very much. We are running a little short of time. So can I invite Jay Akani, President of the Hindu Academy, to give us his perspective.
Colleagues and lords and ladies. I'm going to, in a way, perhaps you should applaud me because my speech is going to be very short and hopefully light-hearted. You see, my daughter was once invited to go to a conference held by women, and the topic of conversation was, why are all the prophets men? And my daughter said, Dad, how do I start? I said, you are very clever. Do you research and tell why all prophets are men? She said, I'm going to start my speech by saying, the reason that all the prophets are men is suggestive that God is a woman. And men have to be told what to do. taking the dustbin out normally. As I said, it's important to lighten up. When we are discussing spiritual issues, sometimes we become very, too engrossed in the material and lose sight of the idea of the spirit, which is actually comes with humor. It's so central to inject humor in the way we present the ideas of the spirit. Now let me come to the serious side. Every religion produces females of exalted character. Every religion, and sometimes of no religion. We produce in every society, every civilization, females who really, if you like, exalt some of the marvelous virtues that perhaps men lack. In fact, in the Hindu tradition, the female is personified, is given the position as a personification of resilience and if you like, perseverance. This is the speciality of women. Spirituality is a very fledgling flame. It requires to be guarded with both your hands. And they burn your hand while you're trying to guard it, as we find in the lives of some of these prophets. They have been, if you like, the carriers and if you like, the messengers of the real ideas of the spirit. Every religion has produced such marvelous personalities. Now you see, we may say, what is the role of women? I mean, just to, nurture children, look after children. In fact, what women do, without beating drums about it, is to nurture not only children, but in the laps of these women, we find the shapes of the major prophets being created. You will find that every prophet has been strongly influenced by what he learned from the laps of his mother. Every prophet in every world religion. So it is marvelous, this is a marvelous opportunity to pay tribute to the idea of female as a spiritual principle that in a way manifests and shows itself through its exalted characters. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you. Last but not least, our dear brother, Mr. Anas Sarwar, MP for Glasgow. He had to be late for this conference. We welcome you to give us the very final information.
Thank you very much. As I'm last, I also will be short and sweet, I promise. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, my lords, ladies, fellow members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, respected faith leaders, Assalamu alaikum, shalom, namaste, sat sri akal. I want to begin by giving my thanks and paying note to my dear uncle, the noble Lord Ahmed, who has done so much fantastic work, not only bringing faiths together, but also standing up for peace, security, and against injustice everywhere around the world. So I think we should start by showing our appreciation to Lord Ahmed. I noted the Rabbi was speaking of the role of women, how they can soften any man and turn them into a lamb. I'm still to find the women that can do that or have that effect on Lord Ahmed, but I'm sure it will happen eventually. I would also like to pay tribute to my dear sister Rubab Mehdi Rizvi, who I had the pleasure of meeting for the first time last year at this very conference and hearing her speak so powerfully. And I remember at that time saying I would be sending a Labour Party membership form in the post and believing that she would be a first-class politician and a first-class member of Parliament. I still stand by that very view. The sad thing is she hasn't sent that membership form back yet. I hope she's not a Liberal Democrat. We're obviously here to celebrate a fantastic woman and a woman that we can all be proud of no matter what faith we represent. And what better forum than the Houses of Parliament to be doing that and recognising the birth of Syeda Fatima Zahra, a truly remarkable woman. A woman without parallel who was a loving mother, a wife, a daughter, a woman who not only sought knowledge but departed what she learnt on others. so that they could also benefit from her wisdom. She had the generosity and the self-sacrifices to look out for those that were less fortunate than her. And she was a tribute to our late great Prophet, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who will no doubt have looked upon from heaven and seen what a tremendous daughter she had. And I think for any of us who are parents in this room, any of us who have sisters, who have daughters, or have any children, I think what greater a blessing could we have than the blessing of a fantastic child who imparts wisdom and fairness and peace on others right around the world. The Rabbi talked about the fantastic role the women play, and he's absolutely right. My proudest moment in my year as a Member of Parliament has easily got to be when I was standing just 6 places behind 2 of my Muslim sisters, Rushanara Ali and Shabana Mahmood, as they swore in on the Holy Quran, wearing hijab, to become the first Muslim women members of Parliament. That is something that I think will stay with me for the rest of my life. And I also thought at that point, you know, we've had several Muslim members of Parliament that are males, we've had several Muslim members of the House of Lords, but in fact for our daughters and our sisters, the greatest inspiration will be seeing one of their fellow sisters coming into Parliament and making a change and standing up not only for the Muslim community, but for every community right across the UK. And it's a sign that with hard work, with determination, with knowledge and the willingness to look out for others, any sister, and I see a lot of young sisters in the room here today, any of you can be the next leaders of our communities, not only of women, but of every community and every faith. So see that as a way of empowering yourselves, and I look forward to hopefully welcoming many of you as future females members of Parliament. One of my roles as a Member of Parliament is I sit on the International Development Select Committee, and I know we're here to celebrate faith, but I want to speak slightly about the role of women in development and fighting poverty right around the world. I fundamentally and passionately believe in the Department for International Development. I think it's one of the proudest legacies of a Labour government that we do have the trebling of our aid budget. We do spend money on the poorest and most vulnerable people right around the world, and we do have a commitment to spend 0.7% of our GDP on development. But I think we should put women at the heart of our development strategy, and the reason why I think that is 2/3 of the poorest people in the world are women. And women, if you bring up a healthy woman, she will give birth to a healthy child, and that healthy child will go on to have a good education, or the best chance of a good education. He'll be able, or she'll be able, to contribute to her society, his village, get an education, do something with that, go into fulfilling employment, be the leader of growth in their country, and help that country move from being a developing country to a developed nation, and bring peace and prosperity to all. And it all stems from that woman and that mother right at the starting point, and that's why we must invest in women and mothers right around the world, to fight child mortality, to promote primary and secondary education, particularly for girls, so women can lead change right around the world. I'm back just a couple of months ago from India, where I saw that actually happening right at the forefront. I was delighted to see that in every village I visited, it wasn't the men that were leading the change in those villages. The men were going out and doing their usual business, they were doing the farming, they had the local shop, but in fact it was women that were educating each other. And I want to share with you just one story of one of the villages I visited in closing. And it was a seminar of the women in the village, young and old, mothers, daughters, grandmothers, granddaughters. And it was a very simple exercise. They picked one woman out of the crowd, and they got 4 pieces of ribbon. And they said, we're going to demonstrate why investing in women is so important. And they got the first ribbon and tied it around the woman's eyes. And they said, imagine this is your daughter, and we kept her in the house, we never let her out. How will she use her eyes and learn what is happening round about her, and affect change and lead change round about her? So they tied a ribbon round her eyes. They then tied a ribbon round her head and said, imagine we didn't let your daughter out to go out to school or have an education. How will she expand her knowledge and be able to impart knowledge on the children that she will, inshallah, give birth to one day? The next one, they tied a ribbon round her hands and said, if we didn't let your daughter go out and fulfilling employment, how will she be able to provide with her husband to be able to put food and give opportunity to their children. They tied a ribbon round their hands. They tied a ribbon around their legs and said, if we don't let our women go out and travel afar to go to school, walk to work, how will they be able to get that opportunity? And the fifth ribbon they tied, there was actually 5 ribbons, the fifth ribbon they tied was actually around our stomach, and said if we don't control the forcing of women to have more children, we want another son, we want a son, we've had 5 daughters, we want a son, or we've got 5 sons, we want a daughter, how will we be able to ensure that we're able to provide every single one of our children equally and treat our sons and our daughters as if they are equal? And then turn by turn, they untied each ribbon. They untied a ribbon around the eyes and said, we're now letting your daughter go out and see the world that's out in front of her. They untied the ribbon around her head and said, now her brain can expand. She can be a glowing beacon, not only for your family but for this village. Why should we only rely on the knowledge coming from the boys? They untied her hands and said she too can go out and lead the change and have a business, own land and create developments in her own village. They untied her legs and said she too can now go out and say to the world that she is equal to any other. Your daughter is equal to any other person in this world. Not only your son but your daughter is equal to any other. And they untied her stomach and said, yes, she will give birth to fantastic children, but she must be an important knowledge to those children and make sure she brings those children up, whether they're sons or whether they're daughters, as equal citizens to any other person right around the world. Those 5 ribbons and that one story and that one family will stay with me forever. And I think by working together, all faiths coming together, we can promote the role of women in our communities and say that we may all be different, we may have different faiths, we may have different genders, we may come from different countries, but what we are united in is fighting poverty, creating fairness, working for stability, peace and security, and making sure that every child in the world has the same opportunity as any other. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna Sarwar MP, for this. And indeed, it really gives us a lot of delight that we see in this very room so many women, so many Muslim women who are in professions, who are doctors, engineers and teachers. To see Khalida, who is the chair of one of the Islamic centers, something not very much known, that we have Islamic centers chaired by women in this country. And she's also the vice chair of MINA. This is really encouraging, and to have Sister Rabab to lead in such a wonderful gathering tonight, I'm sure you all enjoyed it. It's quite an achievement. Before we finish, we have one short message, I hope, from the President of Pakistan, which will be read by Adil Shah, and we need, before we finish at 6, there is a ceremony about the award giving ceremony, which I hope we can finish by 6. Thank you very much.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The message as it received is in Urdu, so it doesn't mean to say that it cannot be translated. The translation in English is available, and after the event it will be distributed. So please forgive me, the people who cannot understand Urdu, but as is come from the President of Pakistan, so I'm going to read as it received. आलमी बैनुल-अदियान हज़रत फातिमा ज़हरा कॉन्फ्रेंस के मौका पर सदर ममलकत आसिफ अली ज़रदारी का पैगाम। मेरे लिए ये इत्तला बाइस इत्मीनान है कि आलमी इमाम हुसैन काउंसिल आलमी बैनुल-अदियान हज़रत फातिमा ज़हरा कॉन्फ्रेंस का इनेकाद कर रही है। जिगरगोशा रसूल हज़रत मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम जनाब हज़रत सैयदा फातिमा ज़हरा सलामुल्लाह अलैहा दुनिया इस्लाम की अजीम हस्ती हैं। उनकी ज़िंदगी इस्लामी तालीमात का अमली नमूना और उनका उसवा पूरी दुनिया की ख़वातीन के लिए लायक तकलीद है। आलमी इमाम हुसैन काउंसिल मुबारकबाद की मुस्तहिक है कि वो आलमी सतह पर बैनुल मज़ाहिब राब्ते का ज़रिया बन रहे हैं और तमाम मज़ाहिब और फ़िरक़ों को एक प्लेटफॉर्म पर जमा कर रहे हैं ताकि ग्लोबल विलेज में रहने वाले इंसानों के दरमियान मोहब्बत, भाईचारा और हम आहंगी की फ़ज़ा कायम हो। इस्लाम और मुसलमानों के बारे में गलतफ़हमियाँ दूर हों और दुनिया को बावर कराएं कि हम दहशत गर्द नहीं बल्कि अमन आलम के पैगाम्बर हैं। मेरी दुआ है कि खुदावंद करीम इस कॉन्फ्रेंस को अपने नेक मकसद में कामयाब व कामरान फरमाए। आमीन।
And now on behalf, the awards will be given on behalf of the International Imam Hussain Council by Lord Ahmed and Sister Imam.
And we will ask Anas Sabra to please join us as well, and anyone else she recommend. Of course, we want Brother Yusuf to stand there as well. Call out the names.
It's Nabahat Ahmed for her activism for the rights of the disabled. About Nabahat, I would quickly like to introduce that she lost her son who had mobility issues, and she looked after him for 18 years. And after looking after him when he died, and when I went to do a source at Nabahat's house, I saw a very brave woman. I did not see a weak woman, and she said that I will try to forget the sorrows by looking after the other disabled children in the world, and that's exactly what she is doing.
Thank you. Welcome.
Shazia Shah, Imamia Mission, for her community services.
No, you. I'll say no. It's because you look older standing next to them.
Okay. Congratulations. Don't mind water.
Sister Bonnie Evans Hill for her interfaith work.
Well, that was a surprise, was it? It looked like. Yeah. Well, congratulations, and thank you so much for the good work that you do.
Look at her.
Please hold it. Took. There you go. Do it again. Do it again. I wasn't looking. No. You've run out of film. Okay. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Alvia Zedi, the star behind Future Stars. Alvia Zedi. She's been doing a children's program by Lord Ahmed and Brother Anas and Brother Yusuf.
Yeah. MashaAllah. Congratulations. Well done. Come on, stand here. That's it. Smile.
He's not a woman, but like your lordship, I do consider him to be, he likes to lead from the rear. Sheikh Amin Evans. He is in the rear.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. There you go. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
Sister Hifza Iqbal for setting up around 8 schools for orphans in foster care.
MashaAllah. There you go. Just give us a smile. Thank you, sister.
Sister Mohsina Rana for her interfaith work. You come instead of this. That's her husband.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Pass on our good wishes. Thank you. Thank you.
She delivers speeches and I collect awards.
Very good.
Again, not a woman, but somebody who has been a source of great encouragement, Dr. Talib Varsi for Interfaith.
word if you don't mind. I congratulate this House of Lords and the Lords and the parliamentarians here to show the world how immigrants are equally treated in this country. For Fatima Zahra Salam was an immigrant from Makkah to Medina. And I see hijab, and I see collars, and I see Jewish caps, and I see a Muslim cap on my head, and I said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed this land where opportunity is not only given to men, but also women and all the immigrants who have come and settled in this country. Thank you.
Dr. Khalida Rahman. She has already been introduced by Brother Yusuf as being a source of inspiration.
And also Vice Chairman of MINAB, which is a very powerful body. I mentioned MINAB in the House of Lords chamber today, so.
Brother Paul Armstrong.
Me.
For the beautiful recitation.
No, actually for the community.
You can hold that for me. Hold that. Thank you.
And my brother Mohsin Hadiri for his work on human rights.
Hold it. Now, okay, once you sign. There you go. Stand for the photograph. Thank you.
Alia Azam for her education work.
Okay, I hope you all had a very fruitful and enjoyable evening. And having finished the speeches, I hope this is really going to give us the inspiration to go out there in the community and genuinely have Syeda Fatima and the example of Barrister Rubab as an example of how our Muslim, especially Muslim women. We have to say Muslim women, they really have it quite rough on two fronts. One is some of the traditions and immigration problems, and one is they are not always very well understood by society. So it is really a very uphill task, and I'm sure with the kind of work that Sister Rubab is doing, with the wonderful support we've had today from our Jewish, Christian, Hindu and other faiths, from all the parliamentarians, from leading figures in our community like Lord Ahmed and young emerging MPs who really are getting into every facet of life, into international development, into medicine, into education, and to see so many young ladies winning so many prizes. We hope that this will be a movement which has been spearheaded by Sister Rubab and the International Imam Hussain to really take this message forward, and we hope to meet you again. We have further interfaith work, and the last word is always going to be for Lord Ahmed, and please have it.
Brother Yusuf, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brother Yusuf, very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure really to say thank you to you all. more importantly, my brothers and sisters from different faiths who've come along today, parliamentarians, the media, and more importantly yourselves that have come here and made this conference a successful conference. The International Imam Hussein's Council and Sister Rubab and her husband and all the team need and deserve a big round of applause before we end. And that's for holding such a beautiful event and inviting you here, but giving me and Anas the opportunity to welcome you to the Houses of Parliament, and we look forward to seeing you very soon again. Safe journey home. Thank you.